Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about critical thinking, and we're going to talk about how we can use media to help with that. My name is Scott Campitelli, the Executive Director of RETN, which is historically and still the educational cable access channel in northwestern Vermont from Essex to Virgins. We are doing a whole lot of other work these days, and obviously a lot of it involves the internet and computers. And Larry Lausch is from Essex Middle School, and we'll just kind of let ourselves flow here, and we are going to let you interrupt sometimes and sometimes not. We're going to jump back and forth a little bit between video that's on YouTube and things, so if you'll bear with us as we make those transitions, we think it'll work for you. We do have a few questions for you, though, before we start. I'd like to get a sense, just by a raise of hands, of who we're talking to, and this is a key component whenever you talk about media. Who are we talking to? Can you give us a sense of grade level, your hand may stay up for all of these possibly, and that's fine. If you are an elementary educator, okay, middle school educator, high school educator. Great. And then your role, curious who people are in the room. Larry and I are just trying to make sure we hit things the right way. Librarians, okay. Technology integrators or specialists supporting people in that. Classroom teachers. Okay. Some other role that I have not named.
School special educator.
I'm sorry?
Special educator.
Okay.
Administrator.
All right, great, thank you. So we gave the broad title of "'Tis the Season" because you're going to see a lot of messages come at you in the next several months, and obviously these two gentlemen will be somehow involved in many of those messages. But what we would like to look at very quickly with you in an hour is some of the ways that we can focus critical thinking by using the media. And of course, advertisements are always a great one because they're so contained. And politics is also a wonderful tool because it is something that is an ongoing discussion over the course of several months. But do not think of any of this as limited to politics. Like to look at a conversation, 30 seconds on each side, right off the bat.
America has had hard times before, yet every time has emerged from the crisis to prosper through innovation, hard work, and the freedom to succeed. Instead of empowering America, Barack Obama's policies are burdening it. Tax increases, trillion-dollar deficits, welfare checks, and still the stock market crashes, jobs are lost, and Barack Obama doesn't seem to care. Mitt Romney knows where we came from and knows which way to go. As a venture capitalist, he used sound judgment to turn failing companies into thriving businesses. He rescued the 2002 Olympics from growing scandal and debt. As a governor, Romney took principled stands but found practical, bipartisan solutions. Tax cuts for small businesses, responsible and accountable spending, real leadership that will make America strong again. Mitt Romney for president.
I'm Mitt Romney. I'm running for president, and I approve this message.
When we went into Larry's class for this discussion, one of the first things that that his students pointed out was sort of some of these positions of, well, the president's done this, or the Republicans have done something else. And so we played off some of these ads, and they presented positions that were very much the politicians' positions. But then, of course, we could respond by giving the other politician a moment to talk.
Made in America. For generations of Michigan auto workers, it's more than a slogan. It's a way of life. But when 1 million jobs were on the line, every Republican candidate turned their back, even said, let Detroit go bankrupt, not him.
Don't bet against the American auto industry.
Now, a retooled, restructured industry is back because of the grit and sacrifice of Michigan workers.
Don't bet against the American worker. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
So as we head into a political campaign, what we're talking about has to do with how people read what comes at them. But let's not limit this to politics. The real issue is, in fact, really about reading. It's about reading the world around you. It's about reading all those messages that are coming at you all the time. And one of the reasons that it's very important for us to work, especially with young people, is they are actually the prime target for these messages. They're the prime target for a number of reasons. They're the prime target, number one, because they are consumers. They are consumers like no other generation their age has ever been consumers. They're consumers in their bedrooms. They're consumers everywhere in the mall. At every moment, they are a potential consumer, as are we all. But they have a distinction that is very different from most of us. We didn't actually have money when we were their age, and there is a much greater influence by young people on money and discretionary funds at this point. So the hope is to help them read the world, taking them from being consumers to being critical thinkers, and then flipping that and turning them into creators. Because you truly find that once the students start creating, they really start thinking critically because they start making the decisions. Some of the things that are important to look at is who is responsible for the message, whether it's an ad, whatever it might be, who is responsible for the message? And who owns the media is another question that's one of my favorites. It's not about good guys and bad guys, but it is about, just going to change something real quick here. It is about how does one actually have access to these things, to the media. I thought that was my cue for something. But this is a very interesting site, and everything we're going to show you today is actually in the documents for the conference, so you can go and get all of this, including the PowerPoint presentations and all the links that are in them. This is a very interesting website. Free Press does a study of all the media. And so you can pick any organization. Let's pick one that, oh, well, of course, a favorite that we would want to look at. The internet is an interesting one. So you can pick any company and see what they actually own pieces of, own parts of, and that can be a very interesting thing to see. For instance, Google is a great example. We're not going to pick on Google, although they're easy to pick on. The fact that they have significant holdings in YouTube, Daily Deals, the Deal Map, Fridge, Beat That Quote, reCAPTCHA, if you've ever had to type in those words that to make sure they know you're a human. All kinds of different things that Google has a piece of the action on. And this site you can actually look, and this is just for background information. It's interesting just to look at who owns what. Sometimes that can be very helpful for students to get a sense of when they're in one location that they might actually be connected to another location or to another business interest. Another favorite, of course, because it's such a great long list, is Comcast. So look at TV holdings for Comcast. Then also look at, and this is an interesting one, shares in Hulu, things like that. It's a distribution company. It's doing a number of different things. It has a number of different interests. And so all these different companies, Gannett, Comcast, actually one of the big biggies is AT&T, the huge company that owns all kinds of things. Just interesting pieces to enter into the discussion as you're looking at this. Who is responsible for the message? And sometimes you want to look at who owns that. It's not a coincidence that NBC will feature the newest Universal Pictures star, because they actually own each other. So why wouldn't they when on their morning TV shows? So there's a lot of self-promotion. A lot of that has to do with consumers. And then, what is the message actually saying? Larry and I would like to make a point that it's really important that you look at any message and how it's constructed and who are they talking to. Here's one.
Why are we inside more than ever
There we go.
and outside less? We play games, but not sports. We eat fast and together less. We let our kids online instead of playing with friends after school. We listen to our headphones and not to each other. What's happened to community? It's time to take it back. Visit ymcastrongkids.org to help make a difference in your community today.
So we don't always have to disagree with messages. The craft is about constructing messages. That's what the craft is about. There are many examples. The beauty of the internet is you have examples at your fingertips when you used to have to hunt around. What does the message really want me to do? These are the important questions that people need to ask about ads, about any message whatsoever. There was a time when, and it's still a powerhouse, believe me. How many people have seen Mad Men or heard of it? Mad Men named after Madison Avenue. This is Madison Avenue in New York, where the advertising industry absolutely blossomed after World War II and became an incredible creative force as well. And Madison Avenue was the epicenter in the world of that. And a lot of effort went into research, development, psychology of how advertising can influence people. The goal is, again, consumers. Well, there'd been a little shift, we would suggest, and that shift had to do in part with, this may be less recognizable, but actually this is Mountain View, California in the Silicon Valley. This is the city that is Google's home. And there's a big shift that's happened in the past 30 years of where that epicenter actually lives. Don't know how many people remember the 1984 Super Bowl ad of Apple, sort of a pivotal point in ad history at this stage, which was a play on 1984, the novel, which was the introduction of the Mac. Big shift 30 years ago. So now, where do we get information, but more importantly, in some ways, where is information about us gathered? Here's a question. What is Google's business? I've heard Google mentioned along with iPads at this conference an incredible number of times. What is Google's business? How many of you use a Google product of some kind? What is Google's business, actually?
Advertising?
Advertising. That's exactly what Google's business is. Google is an advertising company. That is what they do, and they have some of the best data any advertising company can ever gather. Well, what they can provide is they can provide a very clear profile of specific people. It's not personal. We want to be very clear. It's not personal. It's about a profile. It's about data points. They can actually see very specific things. That's something advertisers have always, people who want to sell things, wanted. The digital world allows for an incredibly robust amount of data about people, and that is Google's main business. This is a company that Xaxis, this is a company you probably will never hear of. And they actually are in the business of helping people. I'm going to go to this video quickly. Actually, I'm going to skip ahead to a specific point where they talk about Zaxxas. So now, one of the things that Larry has done and that we really would encourage is by making his students into creators and critical thinkers, put yourself in the position of being an advertiser rather than being the company rather than being the consumer. Zaxxas, this is a Zaxxas industry promotional video that you're about to see.
The world's largest consumer database. And here's a little bit of their how they see it.
Our world is digital. It's an infinite space that is constantly evolving. A world of perpetual dynamic interactions. Every interaction yields a data point. Every connection has an influence. We look at the vast sea of digital data and see limitless possibility. We are Zaxxas. We are a media company for the digital age. We solve a range of advertiser challenges across the digital landscape with solutions informed by insight-driven data and technology. We place advertising across digital channels, reach key audiences at scale, and create powerful resonant connections between advertisers and their customers. Here's how we do it. In the digital world, everyone is connected, and everyone is connected. Every time consumers visit a website on their computer or mobile device, view or click on an ad, watch an online video, search by keyword, or visit a social media site, small anonymous bits of data are produced. We collect this information across digital channels and store it in our secure data warehouse. We also integrate offline inputs for an even more robust view. Through sophisticated analysis, we construct virtual audience portraits that shed light on consumers, who they are, what they're all about, and where they interact in the digital world. We map their virtual journey, leveraging bits of consumer data that consists of demographics, psychographics, and behaviors.
Data points.
Through the intelligent application of data and technology, we help advertisers connect with the most relevant consumers, wherever they are in the digital world. This enables resonant connections and produces real, attributable results. We believe in the power of partnership and the benefits of experts coming together. We are a proud part of the WPP family, and we're a dedicated partner to group and agencies. Our success is our clients' success. Our clients see a strong return on their investment. We are Zaxxas. We see digital brilliance.
This was a company that was announced. Here's a global.
So that's how things are being marketed to the companies, just to be clear. So that is the power of the digital age from a different point of view. You will not, teachers, educators are not the audience. That's another thing we talk to kids a lot about is, are you the audience? Well, sometimes you're not the audience. But it's a fascinating view at the other side. That's the way things are being considered. You know how it works, and we're assuming a certain level of savvy by everyone. You know how it works. Why does Gmail not want you to throw out any of your old mail? Think data points. That's why when you open an email message, you'll see the ads on the right side. Right now I'm refinancing my house, so guess what I get all the time, right? When I buy something for my dog, I get that all the time. When my kid got in Little League, I got baseball, right? Because what's happening is they're not reading your mail. It's just data, okay? But the content of your mail is very important to advertisers. That's a very valuable piece of information. Of course, your friends, very important, and your discussions, and your friends' recommendations, which is a whole nother big advertising means, and message, let me get away from advertising for a minute, messages. Messages among your group. And YouTube is a whole nother piece, actually owned by Google, but it's what do you watch? So all of us get our information from certain places. We get our information from a variety of sources, and some of them are less reliable than others. And so we may trust them differently though, and that's very important. How many of us trust our friends' recommendations? Well, maybe we should trust our friends' recommendations. So it's not all bad. I threw this one in just, because I thought. It depends on, this is an important piece. What are you excluding from your information by your choices? If you get all your information from your friends, what might you be excluding from your information, right? If you get all your information in 140 characters, what might that exclude? And advertisers, by the same token, advertisers being people trying to sell things, are not going to bother marketing to certain groups either. There are many groups that are not worth marketing to. They're pretty obvious if you think about them. People without money, right? I'm just saying cold and harsh. That's the way it is. Data points would say they're not worth worrying about. So where we get our information from is very important. And of course I put up the usual villains, but let's be fair. Any source of information excludes a lot of things. And also you always have to be critical. If you're going to be a critical thinker, you have to be a critical thinker all the time. And that's very important for all of us to remember. Who are they talking to? When I showed the Barbie commercial inadvertently as I was just testing things, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, who they're talking to? And kids are very quick to pick up on this because it's pretty darn simple.
What should we watch today?
Right?
Click to pick a video.
Who are we
Pass the
aiming at here? Well, Barbie is always aimed at a certain group of young humans, right? And Barbie continues to do that through her very elaborate website. And Barbie's not alone. I mean, we're aiming at all different. Kids can be very good about seeing how the targeting is happening. This is actually a representation of, over the course, I'm not sure how many hours it was. I think it's a day, pictures being posted on Flickr, tweets being sent over Twitter. And it's all about profiles, not so much people, right? This is not the Barbie site. This is a different site with a whole different target. And if we start looking at the language of it, the imagery of it, the style of it, we get a pretty clear sense of who are we aiming at. And that's very helpful. I was going to show, but I'm going to spare you a couple political ads because I think you're going to see enough in the next few months. Right? But there are also all the ads that actually don't come specifically from candidates and their campaigns. There's a lot of that. And it doesn't technically have any fingerprints on it. Who are these people, right? And that's the big question. Who are they? What are they trying to tell us? What are they trying to get us to do? Everyone has a motive, even your teacher when he or she stands up in front of you. This is Google Apps. They sell this idea, which I think is one worth note. This is Google's strategy. Again, this is what they sell to retailers and all kinds of retailers, actually. The zero moment of truth. The zero moment of truth for Google, the moment a customer decides to buy. That's the zero moment of truth. All the focus is on that moment and how Google can help you with it. We'll just look at a snippet of this video because it's an interesting one.
Buying behavior has changed in almost every category. Consumers have many more choices than they've ever had before.
We used to have a website and felt like we were present. Now it's so important to create platforms where you can engage your consumers and exchange information.
In today's marketplace, you have to be out there on the internet. You have to be out there in the social media.
Our job, if we're going to get closer to our customers, is to be there when they're looking for things.
things about our company.
The process of meeting those shopper needs begins at the zero moment of truth.
Have you been in a store and seen a buyer with a smartphone taking a picture of a product to learn more about that product, to read a rating or review while standing in the aisle? These are all zero moments of truth.
That consumers going in every day and typing into browsers and actually actively sharing with you.
As we've connected people at the zero moment of truth, we are seeing people sign up and want to know more and be part of movements and communities.
It applies in a consumer and in a business-to-business context.
If we hadn't embraced ZMOD, we would not exist today as a business.
So remember, next time you buy, you're at the ZMOT. Okay. But this is the flip side. So why teach kids this? And then Larry will give you an example of how it can be implemented. People may or may not have heard of Marshall McLuhan. He was someone who predicted a great many things that have come since the 50s when he started his work. This quote, which we share with students, and it's interesting if you give them enough time to digest it and think about it. This is the world our students have come into. They're unfamiliar with a lot of things that we reflect on. This is the world, and it's water for a fish. And that's a very important point. Fish knows nothing about water. Fish knows nothing but water. That is the environment that the fish lives in. And this was, McLuhan's been dead for 30 some odd years. But this is the way media has been since the 50s, and the internet is just one more ramped up version of it. So this is why it's important. And as a matter of fact, Larry, how did your kids do with reflecting on this after they studied for a while?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Okay. All right.
That was, and I'll explain, because the project I'm about to do, I wrapped up yesterday. Talk about last minute. And that'll be interesting to find out. I'll take over for a minute, at least the talking part. And never used this before, but we'll see how it goes. What I like when, oops. Okay, that's interesting. We're missing a slide, of course. It's like I always tell the kids, the only time technology fails you is when you need it, and they understand what I'm talking about. I'd like to know who's talking, and basically I've been teaching for 30-some years, middle school level, reading and math, and so I kind of know the classroom a little bit. I noticed we had really good diversity in classroom teachers and levels and all. And hopefully, I hope this is going to be good for elementary, because I don't know too much about that level, but I'm sure it's going to work. The class that I used, and this is one of the things I wanted to do, I wanted to emphasize critical thinking. And I didn't want to do it with a lot of people call them high flyers. I teach a reading class that instead of foreign language in 8th grade and 7th grade, they take my reading class. And it started all because of the kneecaps. My school decided, well, we just can't shove them off there, give them a study hall to get in trouble with, because we are going to be accountable. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but over the past years it's been very successful, and I want to see, let's take it a little bit further, and let's see if we really can't get that critical thinking with people who you would not expect. Here's critical thinking definition. Don't be afraid of my PowerPoints. Scott's already warned me they're text heavy. I try to get a resource for you. All these things are posted on the website so that you can have an outline, so in case there was something you want to get back with. This one is, I'll read it to you, blah, 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 blah. This is the one I like, and it comes from an unreliable source. Basically, reasonable reflection. What I like, it's a reasonable reflection that you look at both things to decide what to do and what to believe. You don't start with what to believe and what to do. And I'll get to that. I think sometimes as teachers and educators, we start with what to do. Here we go. Thought I'd throw that in there. See how hep I am as a classroom teacher. There's your Common Core. It's in there. It was funny. I did have a hard time finding an exact critical thinking Common Core thing. I think it's laced in there, and I'm not familiar enough, but I thought it'd really look you know, cutting edge here by throwing that in there. All right, let me talk about the project with these folks. And I decided we'd be Mad Men. But 21st Century Mad Men, I was intrigued by the Mad Men series. I thought it was Mad M added to add. It's Madison. Yeah, there you go. See, you learn something every day. What I love about Mad Men is, of course, I recognized all that stuff. You know, I recognized, you know, that. I said I'd forgotten about some of that kitchen stuff, you know, that we had back in the 50s, being 60 some years old. So, you know, we decided, you know, who would we could get an idea of the 20th century. Let's think about who are the 21st century. Okay? And basically, Scott has already kind of explained what they're up to. But what does that mean to these kids? So, the reason that we have is, Gallagher wrote a book called Deeper Reading. And it's a great book, especially, it's one of the first books that was directed at adolescent reading. And he contends that, as Scott had pointed out, you got to read the world. And as he has just made a great point, that world is just heavy on that internet, on all of this type of stuff like Google, etc. So that must be what was kind of different from the 20th century Mad Men here, okay? But I'm going to back up a little bit because it's nice if there's a connection. I won't insult any of you. It looks like all of you probably understand. You just don't throw something out of the blue. You also, if any of you have any either reading instruction or even science or math instruction, you know you connect it to something, otherwise your engagement is lost. So let's talk about what brought this up first, because it came up first, then we got Scott involved. We know that advertised about manipulation, information gathering. We had just, my favorite short story is Harrison Bergeron. And I used short stories and expository reading extensively, and then finally in 8th grade, it's funny, they're ready for that kind of extension of the reading. And of course there was the handicap general controlled everybody and everything, and I took a moment to reflect on 1984 where the government manipulates everybody, which is the prediction, interestingly, both from Kurt Vonnegut and from Orwell, that the government will be the controllers. The government will gather the information. Okay? So we said, so who's doing it now? They predicted the government. Who's doing it now? I love this. I love this. So we did prior knowledge. So I poll the kids and say, all right, who's controlling now? Who's gathering and invading your privacy and gathering? You know who it is. Teachers, parents, police, school administrators. That's who. Doesn't that kind of tie into Scott's The Water They Don't Know About?
Yeah.
I thought it was beautiful because they just like, oh yeah, you know, Snoopy teachers, you know. They're trying to control us. They're, you know, where are you going right now, you know? They want to know what our emails are, you know, what websites we're visiting and stuff like that, okay? The problem with this thinking, though, as we discussed, is we really don't have the means. You know, we really, you know, we have limited access to what kids are doing. It's kind of frightening, but it's reality. So what we just said was, whoa, wait a minute, the big brother, this is who's gathering information. This is where they're going. So we brought Scott in. Scott did a really, really wonderful presentation that brought in a lot of the things. And by the way, when asked students, what is Google about? It's about searches. It's about information. Facebook is about relationship and friends. You all are sophisticated. They never ever. Now they think the Google guy is, the Face guy is really great because he's a billionaire, but they never put together that he had to get that money from somewhere. They thought these were all free and that they were all very beneficial things to their lives. And Scott dispelled that. Right now when I ask them, crushed their world. Now I said, so what are they about? They answered like you did. They will now say advertisement. So maybe if nothing else out of this project happened, at least now they understand Facebook is about making money off of them somehow. Now what Scott did and what I really loved was, I have an opinion about Facebook. I have an opinion about Google, you know. I don't necessarily have a good opinion about Facebook. So what I have to do, because so often these kids are told like drug, alcohol, we really tell them what to think. And we don't, in my opinion, really work enough on how to think. So there has to be no judgments. One kid, we were looking through advertisements, said, well, can I use a beer ad? I'm going, yeah, beer ad's great for advertisements, you know, but you can see how it's already been realized in school, you don't discuss beer or beer ads. You don't do that because the local, are there any counselors in here? Oh, okay, I'll watch it. The local counselor, well, you know, no. I'm sure you teach them how to think.
I use beer ads.
Yeah, there you go. So here's my project, and I'll just whip through this really quickly here. We decided, you know, let's be admin. You know, let's be 21st century madmen after we got Scott in there. Scott, how do I get this? Yeah. So first thing we do is most of you are familiar with techniques of propaganda, you know, the bandwagon. We have documents and all that posted, and I will bore you or insult you with these types of things, but it's all out there, and there's some good material. So first of all, we looked at static ads.
You want to see her?
Sure.
Mira, do you have some testimonial? Let me look at it.
It's right there. It has like famous people on it, so I guess it's just trying to like attach the person who is trying to buy like an iPod or an iPhone. Whoever's like trying to buy it, like if a famous person does it, they would want to do it also.
Great, and those are famous golfers, right?
Yeah, like Tiger Woods.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Ironically, Tiger Woods, but I guess it's back up against kind of his sellability stuff there. So we looked at all these, you know, and it started to be good. Sometimes it's tough to take them over that threshold, you know, of trying to see what is going on behind things, rather than just describe what's there. Then we went to video ads, as Scott pointed out. Great source.
I thought generalities, repetition, red herring, and testimonial.
Testimonial?
Yeah.
These two twins, you think
Yeah.
you know something? And you thought the locale and all was your glittering words?
Yeah.
And who do you think the target was for this particular one?
I thought everyone is, because everyone likes to eat them.
Yeah, they won't mind if everybody.
Yeah.
So you think their target might be somebody who enjoys nuts though? Is that
Yeah.
true? Target kind of somebody who likes snacks, that type of thing?
Yeah.
All right, it's pretty obvious what they're selling there, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
And you see my prompting. All you classroom teachers understand how to draw it out, you know, because they'll say, well, it's testimonial, you know. Okay, second step, we examine targets. Scott talked a lot about the targets. I personally thought that it was like Big Brother looking in, you know, and building this and all this information. And after a lot of research, I realized it's computer programs just pulling in all this data. And I would show a lot of these ads, and then they would have to respond, what's the target, what's the technique? And a lot of conversation came out of it. Keywords got to be very interesting. This was phenomenal. This is Google AdWords. Anybody can go there. What you do, I knew there would be librarians in here. So, like library, it's hard to read up there, but that's all right, Scott. For instance, software, library software, gets 90,500 hits per month as a search word. And then it gives you locally. And what you do is you buy these hits for like 50 cents, 75 cents, so that when they hit on that, they go to your ad. Sometimes you got to get in a bidding war though. If I bid $3 for the hit, you bid $3.50, your ad comes up before mine. So the kids looked at all these, and they even realized that if you add an S, that's a different word. So we discussed those.
What is that again?
What's that?
that you just showed? I'm not.
It's Google Ads. You see?
Oh, that's
AdWords. They
AdWords.
sell AdWords.
Yeah,
Google
see,
AdWords.
these are search words, keywords, and they'll tell you how many hits. As a matter of fact,
Where would you pull up?
So if you're a company and you buy into AdWords, when someone browses in Google, when someone searches rather in Google, if the AdWord you paid for is their search,
I get
your
what-
ad comes up. That's how the advertising is sold. Where'd you
get
Just
that?
the site.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
Now, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, it's anytime you just go to Google AdWords, and if you go, what I realize is that they're very upfront about advertisement. I thought they'd be kind of more smirmy and dark, and they'll show you how to do your ad. They'll go walk you through these steps. As a matter of fact, I signed on for an account, and then they'll show you like charts and graphs about how well your ad will do and how many you'll get. Of course, they blocked me off later on because I hadn't made payment arrangements, you know. But fascinating. One of the reasons I finished my project yesterday is it was to try how to contain all this. You know, I wanted to use Facebook, but I had to contain it to an 8th grade time limited thing. I just wanted to, because I was learning a lot more than the kids, obviously. But it's amazing. You know, like I did shelving, you know, 368,000 a month, you know, hits on that.
Okay, just as a question. I've always wondered, like, when you do a search, like how they decide.
Bingo, yeah.
And then I'm like, maybe I should go to page 3, or, you know, so I get through the nonsense.
The hierarchy
get any better.
is based on, well, sponsored ads, the hierarchy is based on the highest bidder, generally. I mean, it's much more nuanced, but highest bidder. But then Google also uses what's based on, originally based on really academic citations. How many times are things referred to by each other is the other part of the hierarchy. So what comes up first is what has been connected to the most, right, or referred to the most. So it's all a very elaborate mathematical, but this is not new to advertising. This is how advertising has always worked. They're just phenomenal new tools.
Yeah.
They're amazing new tools that are very specific. As a matter of fact, I just wanted to point out that right-hand column, Larry. Local searches.
Yeah.
Because remember that your computer has an identity and a location.
Yeah, they know where you are.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I can,
Your
Doug and
phone,
I can
right?
go look at our own website and we know
Newport
where all the
weather. How'd they
visitors
know
come
I'm in
from.
Newport, you know?
Right, and so you can limit your scope of your advertising too, to just people within a certain radius, something like that.
So locally, there's 27,000. Might be one of you librarians who are looking into librarian software. They got you on there. You know, they got you on there. So this was pretty intriguing with the kids too. And what was fun was to go to the AdWords and they'd want to know which one's which and how many that was, and that's kind of fun. So, creating. Let's see. We try to get them critically thinking, looking at all of it, right? We said, well, we all know, all of us, especially classroom teachers, I teach algebra. So I always try to do the test I'm giving. A lot of times I'll throw things out because the test I thought was going to take an hour, I've produced a 2-hour test. So we learn so much by doing what we're learning or talking about or studying. So they are to become the madmen. They're going to create a Google ad. I finally contained it a Google ad. And they had to present it. Now, what I found out about project work is the greatest thinking will go into figuring out what to do for a project. And then they spend 2 or 3 weeks looking for one image to put on the poster. So what I wanted to do is get the thinking. I really didn't care too much about that final product. So I decided to do a proposal of the ad. And what they had to do is I was the boss, put my suit on, I got in the conference room. They had to propose to me. I made certain scenarios on, like that their wife just left them, they got 4 kids and they have to have this job, so the proposal has to be good. And then I'd say, as the boss was, how's your kids doing? They go, oh, they're doing great. And I look at another kid, do I really care? They go, no, you're the boss, you don't really care. So we had a little fun with it. But they were to, they got a campaign, because it could be a charitable organization. They got their target. They got keywords. Well, they got what do you want the target to do? They got their keywords, and then they picked 2 formats, which Google showed me the formats. So I can get them on a mobile phone. You get it on one of their affiliated websites. And then they would do like a video, or would they do a text, or would they do one? And you ever see these product extensions where they kind of go through the product? Anybody see them on the searches, how the products come right up underneath the search as an image and all? So they had to give me that, and they had to propose it. And then I decide whether they keep their job or not. I thought we'd get a little brutal. And that's what I did here. You know, welcome to your first job. You're making $100,000, but you're gonna this whole you know, that outlines what they're to do. That's on the website too. Okay, so the presentation will need to be kind of loud there, Scott. Yeah. I've got one proposal here from. Before we started, Scott,
Yep. I'm going to see if I can get a little more volume here while you're talking.
Here's what happened yesterday. Now, I've kind of told you that according to the school, these are not like the greatest readers, right? I actually have found that a lot of kids aren't great readers because they really haven't been taught reading. That we catch these kids that are quick readers and say you're a good reader, and the kids who are kind of maybe even thinking about what they're reading are not so good. And so what happened then was, so I wanted this target group. I thought it could just fall flat. You know, I said, but at least we learned something. Yesterday, they exceeded all my expectations. They brought their stuff in. They stood up, you know, there. They because part of it was presentation mode, and I was impressed. So I guess I will, you know, make kind of the idea of high expectations. Okay, Scott.
So it's a little low, the volume.
Yeah.
But
Scott, just put it on one more time. Let me just preface. He's decided Legos is his campaign.
I'll back him up.
Main consumer. Then the parents. The kids want Legos, so they've got the money, so they'll buy the Legos for their kids. They're the main purchaser. And then the hardest of them all, which are the grandparents, might want to get something for their grandson or granddaughter, like a gift or just...
We'll pause it. It's unfortunate. I just got an iPad and I'm trying that out, and I was a little distance. But what he does with his Lego ad, I will kind of explain. He does a much better job than I will do. He has his target group, which is kids, parents, and then he even goes into grandparents and he explains his target group and what he wants to do. You know, like the target, he wants the kids to really get it. The parents, he wants them to think it's safe and educational. And the grandparents, he wants, you know, their grandkids will love them for getting it. And then he has several, he goes down his AdWords. What I liked about what he did too was he said, here's what I want them to do. I want them to get these Legos and then tell their friends how great they are and spread around how wonderful it is. And I want the grandparents to tell, I got a set of Legos, you know. So he went even further on what he wanted those customers to do. Then his format, which would be great to have him explain, his format, one of them is he did a video where the kid's bored and he starts daydreaming. He goes to Legoland. A Lego guy takes him around. All these cool kids are playing, having a great time. And
here, let's let him go here, Larry. I
think he
found the fourth audio
That would be
control.
great.
To make them happy. This is one of the least likely targets to convince. Yeah, it's one of the 3 targets. So my objective is I want to show kids how cool and must-have Legos are. I want to show the parents they're safe, affordable, and worthwhile. And then tell the grandparents it's a great present for their grandkids. I have great ideas and have constructed 2 different Lego ads, which would work very well. The first of which, in the format of a video. The techniques, bandwagon, glittering generalities, plain film are the main techniques. So this ad is a kid is very bored and then falls asleep and is beamed into a magical world of Legos, where then appears a Lego man who on the screen talks about things about Legos to the parents and grandparents while the kid has fun playing with Legos. Then all of a sudden he wakes up and then goes to his mom and starts asking for Legos. And his mom's happy to go to the store and get some for him. My second ad is an image technique. So, it's also bandwagon, plain folk, and glitter generality. I'm sorry, it's also video.
Okay, so you get the idea at the level that he's taking this to. And what I loved about little Cam here, he goes, okay, hope that was impressed you, and I will keep my job, you know. So they did a nice job of it. And over most of the whole, to a person, and what I did say to these kids, some of them weren't ready, and they had to go anyway. Kind of nice. And one kid, he couldn't type it all, you know how they wait the last minute, couldn't print it out, etc. Okay, so I think it worked. I think it's worth trying. I will say personally, I thought web companies were villains, and now when I retire, if I have to do any advertising, boy, you're crazy to advertise any place but here, especially if you have a local business. There's a rubric we've posted, it's our district's rubric if you want to take a look at it. And one of our big objects was this thinking and becoming aware, and I think we really accomplished that. We did want to leave some time for questions and discussion.
So how long have you had the kids digging into this, Larry? Sort of intermittent with other things?
Yeah, the trouble I was having was because I'm sure some of you are aware when you go out there, it's never been done. And like corralling it was the biggest part. And when did you come in? March? Or was that April? March? And I just finished up. We had some things going on like spring break in there, and I took a week off because I had no idea what to do next. You know, and finally hit me, and that's what we got this for. And yes?
I'm sorry if this is a relevant question. I have a dream that the world's not all about advertising. And that's just all you've been telling me. Am I crazy?
Well, messages, but it's messages. I would say that's a big part of this, is that it isn't just advertising. Ads are just a very clean way. They're so succinct, they're easy to work with, they're always short, and that's why they're very useful. But the fact is, messages, whether it's a tweet or the headline on their newspaper or whatever it is, messages are what we are truly inundated with today. There are people sending us messages all the time. And so no, it doesn't have to be advertising. But what you'll find is people, whoever gives you a message, is presenting you with something where they're trying to influence you. It's not all bad. It's not all bad. Even helping kids see, for instance, I think by Larry putting them in the position of being the creators, that's the other piece of it, is when you are going to put yourself out there, you need to have a plan, a thought in mind. You know, you are presenting. And I would argue these students that we're teaching will be in this world, and that will be the expectation of them. I haven't interviewed anyone for a job at our company in the past few years that I haven't expected them to present. They present, not just come answer questions, present. Can you present yourself? And I think that's a big part of it. So you're right, it's not all about advertising, but the volume of advertising aimed at kids today is enormous. It's amazing.
So that's part of our job, is to help kids, children, help them to decipher how to filter these things out. Is that connected to what you had just said? I'm not sure. I mean, I constantly connect with kids to say that you have got so much more information coming at you than I ever did at your age.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that long ago, I don't think. So I wonder if they're having trouble right now, you know, saying, you know, I don't need that, I need this, I don't need that. And
I think we all are. I think we all are.
Yeah, oh, that's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
Right.
But they know no other world.
Right.
Right. They're the fish in water. I mean, that's why we like to kind of hang on that quote. They really are. And they aren't recognizing, sort of like, you've probably taught about needs versus wants, right? That's an interesting needs versus wants. Well, they aren't necessarily even recognizing when people are trying to influence them. So they're not seeing, so it's not all about advertising, but the truth is consumerism is a major, major, major issue that we have in our culture. Because there's always, it may not look like an ad. They may not think it's an ad. They may, and that's part of it, is to recognize what are the messages about. And a lot of the messages being aimed at young people are actually selling them something. Lifestyle, right?
Good.
I mean, they're being exposed to a lot of things that there's actually almost no way to stop from them being exposed to. We can't actually stop that at this point.
But you can teach them how to notice.
Right. To always be thinking. Even when your friend says, hey, come on, let's see. I mean, is that an ad? No, not exactly, but it's the same process. It's the same process. That's how human interaction is. And we're trying to sell you on an idea that this might be important. You might want to integrate it in your class, and that we can give you some tools to do it.
That's how we teach social thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Theory of mind stuff. Yeah.
And a lot of the kids picked charitable organizations. So, and I'm so glad that we stayed non-judgmental because they felt there were some good things that they could do with this.
Mm-hmm.
And they found some, like pencils and some of the other charities, and they did a nice job of proposing these campaigns. So my motto, which comes from Better Answers, I want to cite them, was, in my class it's all about looking good and sounding smart. And not like looking pretty, but looking good at what you're doing and sounding smart. And actually, once they start thinking about that, and I think in this, you're talking about advertising, but it is a lot about communication. And you're talking about what we can communicate with and how we're always being communicated to. That certainly is what it's all about. And they need some help sifting through that.
And there is great potential, so that Larry and I don't sound like the anti-internet people, because that isn't at all how we feel.
No, I'm using it.
But they're actually,
I'm going for it.
I would argue, and I will give you a personal plea, because I've worked in the television industry for 20 years. It's one of the most despised kind of industries, right, because of how awful it is. How the tools are used is actually the issue. Television is the most powerful medium that has come into the world in the past 100 years. The internet may be next, and it may eclipse it, but look at what's the most important content on the internet. Video, right? It's not going to be called television anymore. But these tools are incredibly powerful, however you choose to use them. They're incredibly powerful. And these are the people who are going to be using them. So they could, we can turn all these things on their head. It is possible, actually, if we had a conviction to it and we'd all decided collectively. Cue the orchestra, But that's a choice, and those are decisions, and those are how people pursue things. So that's really what it comes down to, is this is an incredibly powerful medium. When you're walking down the street and with your cell phone and the electronic signs start talking to you, they're either going to ask you to go into the Gap and buy something that's on sale because they know you're a woman and they know your name. Or we could actually motivate each other to do other things too. There's a lot we could use this technology for. It can be very powerful technology, it is. Vermont has the largest per capita number of nonprofits in the country. Vermont has the largest number of libraries per capita in the country, largest number of local community access television operations in the country, largest number of breweries in the country. I can't connect all those dots together, but you have a lot of choices. People have a lot of choices of how to use all these tools. They're incredibly powerful. But first they have to have a clue. That's really what it comes down to, of the power of them and how they work. So thank you very much. If you have other questions, we're happy to take this little 10-minute slot and talk to you. But everything we showed you and a bunch more is on the Dynamic Landscapes website.